make sure that your application has the right quality and the right safety features in it before you release it and after you release it, so that on an ongoing basis, you're going to deliver the right value in a safe way to your users.
Yaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be hosted by you. It's a pleasure and it's an honor.
Absolutely. Pleasure is mine. Maybe we should take advantage of your own long history within driving product to success within it's either your own companies or different companies. And I really wanted maybe to give us a snapshot in the 2023 evolution of LLM evaluation specifically. And how do you see the domain itself from a business perspective? What caused all of this phenomena of LLM evaluation tools and platform to be developed? So just let's pick up your mind in this.
So it's pretty amazing when we decided to focus on LLM evaluation, which is about April or May 2023. What we've been hearing from companies, and the reason we started focusing on this is, everyone was amazed by the launch of ChatGPT in late 2022. And, some people, me included, had some doubts in early 2023 whether this is going to catch. And, we all know what happened. It caught like fire. And what happened is that many corporates and startups and, everyone basically jumped on the wagon, released something just to understand. People responded to it pretty bad. And the response was, hey, you're giving the wrong answers. It totally doesn't make sense. Your LLM application is hallucinating, or there are severe safety issues in your LLM applications. So that's what happened in early 2023, and then what happened in April, May this year is that us, and of course several others, and eventually many others, understood that there is a significant issue here that needs to be addressed. And that's the ability to make sure that your application has the right quality and the right safety features in it before you release it and after you release it, so that on an ongoing basis, you're going to deliver the right value in a safe way to your users. So eventually, that leads into LLM evaluation. So how do you do it? Well, you need to make sure that there is regression testing before you launch to production. There is production monitoring. And even in the early stage, when you're developing it, how do you compare between experiments? So you're just changing one small thing in your prompt. How do you know that that's not going to create a situation where you're going to expose unsafe information to your users, or you're not going to create a situation where they feel uncomfortable because the quality of your answers has regressed?
In terms of demands, this is a great point actually. But in terms of demands nowadays, how do you read the demand? Is it going to be increasing? Is it going to stay plateaued at the point? From again, like from a business perspective, I know a lot of companies, they start already to adapt their own LLM infused applications. It's either by building some RAG applications in the top of the LLM itself, or maybe by fine tuning, or maybe by combining both of them. From what you have seen, at least, how do you assess the demand in terms of business? Are you expecting it to be growing? Is it going to be like most likely the same?
So I think that we're just in the beginning. So what do I mean by that? We're not in the beginning of people adapting LLM APIs. Of course, this is, we're in the middle of it. I don't know exactly where in the adoption curve we are, but we're definitely, in the midst of this amazing, incredible revolution. Like a year ago, if we would have spoken and I would have told you, we're an AI validation startup and we're going to devote 99.9% of our resources to this new thing called LLM, you would have looked at me and say, you're crazy. There's no chance. I mean, maybe you would put like, 20, 30% of your resources. No, 100%, almost 100%. And the reason is the immense power that people are seeing in adopting this amazing technology. So that's happening. Now, of course, what happens, I started by saying, by kind of describing the situation in earlier this year. What we're seeing now is that now, unlike 6 months ago, when people said, what, LLM evaluation is interesting. Let us get into it when we get into production. Now people are saying, we need to start today. We need to start by testing our applications well. We need to start by objectively comparing our experiments. And this is growing more and more. The more time passes, the more people understand that, like in the early days of software, where initially people used to release software without basically testing it properly, this is the situation right now with LLM-based applications. But because we're in 2023, well, actually we're in 2024, people understand the need to do it as early as possible because they see the equivalence between applications in general and LLM-based applications. So they know we must have regression testing, we must have experimentation comparison, we must have a release criteria before we put it into production, and we must have production monitoring. The growth is going to be similar to the growth that we're seeing on the use of LLMs. It's probably, 6 to 12 months in a delay, but in 2024, we should see immense growth on the whole field of LLM evaluation.
Yeah, and you mentioned actually like the pre-evaluation, or like what we call it, pre-deployment evaluation, and the post-deployment evaluation, what people call it monitoring, which is a very important aspect when it comes to LLM based applications, because the nature of LLM is non-deterministics. So maybe with the more data you feed it into it, it probably could adapt totally different behaviors. So in terms of metrics, do you see any differences between pre-deployment and post-deployment? And if there is anything, what are the major difference between the two paradigms?
So there's not necessarily in the terms of metrics, but in the terms of when you're pre-deployment, our terminology calls it golden set, but think about it in the quote unquote traditional AI, and it's funny to say, oh, classical AI, a year ago we wouldn't have said that. So in terms of classic or traditional AI, you had clarity in the metrics, you had a test set. Okay, so in order to release to production, you would have said, okay, that test set needs to pass a certain criteria in terms of your metric, and your metric can be precision and recall, accuracy, F1, etc., an abundance of metrics. These days, you would see a similar situation on your testing side, and we called it golden set. So you would like to have a golden set where you can you can use in order to objectively measure your experiment or your version before you go to production. In terms of the metric, it's not necessarily different, but the production side, you don't have really a reference. You measure it in terms of each individual interaction between the human and the machine needs to be evaluated, or probably most likely a sample of those needs to be evaluated. But at the end of the day, the metrics would be similar.
That lead me to some of the important aspect of evaluation, which is human evaluation. Yes, we can automate so many different metrics, but human rules remain one of the most golden standard in terms of evaluation. So how do you read like the rule of human, and are we emphasize it more in the post deployment, which is monitoring part, more than the pre-evaluation? And are they going to be replaced at any given moment?
So I think that the role of humans is going to be mostly on the pre-production side. So let's first start by describing what's going on the production side. On the production side, if you're going and we're working with some of these companies that have millions of interactions per day with their customers on LLMs. There's no way, I mean, you can sample, but even if you will sample and you will have people, by the time that they complete their evaluation process, just to give you a sense of what a proper evaluation process means, we hear from our customers anything between a minute to 5 minutes, or actually 2 minutes to 5 minutes of time that it takes them to properly evaluate each and every interaction. Okay, so if you have millions of interactions and you want to evaluate 1,000 interactions per day, which would be a significant subsampling, you would still go into amazing figures. So you'll need to have a team that's on an ongoing basis evaluating this. It's not scalable. Okay, so that's the
Absolutely,
problem
yes.
on the production side. I believe that on the production side, you need to be, I would say, 98 to 99% automated. You will need some human evaluation of that. I don't think that humans should be put out of the loop. I think that it would be a mistake to put them completely out of the loop. But if you take the daily process should be completely automated. The weekly process might be automated, might be somewhat human. The monthly process probably needs to look at the automated results and reevaluate them and potentially sample them. So that's on the production side. On the production side, I think that the vast majority of the evaluation needs to be automated. When you go back into the testing side must start with a human. There's, I mean, when you're developing a new application or when you're developing a significant change of your application, you need to start with a human, an expert, an expert in the domain, a domain expert in the domain that you're looking into, that takes a significantly small sample and says, this is your true ground truth. On top of that, you can build a process, and this is what we at DeepChecks do. So on top of the basic evaluation that a human does, we build a process that says, okay, now we can look at things like similarity. So if your next iteration gives an answer that is very similar to the previous one, thumbs up. If your new version gives a totally different answer, let's take a look at what are the components of that answer. Does the LLM thinks that this answer is correct? Does a transformer model thinks that this is grounded in context, meaning it does not create a hallucination? Do we see a significant change in some technical evaluations? And then say, okay, now we're doing regression testing. So a machine can do a regression testing, a human needs to do an initial evaluation, and a machine can do a pre-production evaluation. So start with humans, continue with automated answers, have humans review the automated processes on an ongoing basis. And then when you launch the production, rely on automated process, because otherwise you cannot deal with the scale.
That is absolutely. I think most of the companies is definitely like relying on human, at least when creating the base models. Many of the companies actually they are encouraged by many of the experts to create their own leaderboard, not relying on some of the benchmarkings out there. Like it's either for the domain or because each use case is treated differently. So I really like what you mentioned about like the role of the human. So if I understood correctly, you're involving the human basically pre-deployment, like during your own development, and you involve them in two different fashions. The first one to initiate the evaluation itself by defining what we call it, like I think ground truth, and then you're involving them after you do the development. You just have a double check on your own outcome. Is that correct? Okay.
So humans are important. Machines can replace repetitive work. Machines can replace some, I would say, thinking, but eventually you need smart humans that are domain experts to look into what you're doing.
And when it comes to multilingual LLMs, because now most of the talk goes into English LLM, so
Yes.
that's a whole different animals. So what do you think is the main challenges when it comes to addressing this multilinguality within the LLM, and specifically how to evaluate those type of multilinguals?
So I'll be completely honest. I think that you and I natively speak some, non-English languages, not a single language, actually variations of it. We're not going to discuss what's the basic language. I don't know, to be honest, but most of the world actually communicates naturally without using English. However, when we look into like our core, so we started from our open source. You rightfully gave us credit in the beginning for us, for being one of the innovators and the leaders in this space. So we started our journey into LLMs from our NLP open source testing package. Naturally, it grew up from supporting English. Surprise, surprise. You know how that goes. The open source models support English. Everyone speaks English. Your first most significant market is in English-speaking countries. So our offering right now supports mostly English. We are looking into, at some point, supporting additional languages. And I think that as the space is going to mature, we're going to see more and more of that. But in the next, I would say 6 months, at least on our side, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're not the only ones, we're going to continue and focus on English-speaking languages. I think that once you go beyond English, you have the challenges of, okay, I have an HR policy chatbot. Well, it needs to have to answer conversations in French and in German and in Arabic and in Hindu. Okay, wonderful. How do I find the expert? We spoke about the human factor. How do I find the experts
Yeah.
in each of these languages, which is also an expert in my domain of expertise? It becomes a more complex problem. And I think that what will happen is that as solutions like ours are maturing and will enable more and more automated processes, you will see companies like ours support non-English languages.
That is absolutely great. I've seen a lot of companies providing human in the loop as a service by itself, and a lot of companies, same as Deep Checks, the supporting this automated version of it. So my own reading of this, if there is some hybrid system between putting the human expertise from the multilingual, multi-domains into the same type of platform that an automated platform of evaluation, it could serve, and it could go like so long in the process of evaluation, because at the moment I don't think we can absolutely rely on 100% automation of the matrix, because even the matrix themselves, the changing over time, like from use case to use case, you're not going to be looking at the same set of metrics. Even for the same business, what you think it's important for your business today, not necessarily going to be the same as next week or maybe next month. So you cannot give the same weight for all of the metrics and just calculating the average between all of them. And this is lead me to my second questions regarding the multimodality. So now we're talking only about natural language. So if we put in the top of that, like the audio and plus the video, and then now you have this multimodality, and in terms of LLM evaluation, and I don't know if we can even call it LLM in this case,
Yes,
this is adding this is adding more complexity into the process of evaluation. So could we brainstorm like how this could be addressed in the LLM evaluation?
So to be honest, okay, let's a little bit about the history of deep check. So we, on the testing of classical AI models, we have support for NLP, for tabular, and for image models. And when you look at multimodal, well, of course, you can say, okay, that's easy. You've supported all of these things in the beginning, now supported on generative AI multi-models use case. Well, it's not easily transferable, I think. But what's transferable is, I believe, and we're completely, I didn't spend enough time thinking about it, to be honest. We're razor focused on supporting LLMs at this point. Single model. And if I'm completely being, I think that at the end of the day, there are going to be, which is similar to what we had when we supported, let's take as an example, image. So you have properties of images that you can speak about. Let's start from the basic, very simple ones, such as the contrast, such as the number of objects, etc., etc. You can, you can take a look at our open source image processing evaluation, and you can have properties that evaluate certain aspects of your image, like we have today properties that evaluate certain aspects of your language answers. And by the way, we already have different aspects or different properties, as we claim them, as we term them, that evaluate if your use case is generative. We're not going to talk about or pure generative. We're not going to talk about your document relevancy because you did not do document retrieval, which is
Of
relevant
course.
to a Q&A process. So similarly, you can speak about image properties and evaluate something based on that. Similarly, in audio, you can transcript that, and some of it will be transferable to the good and old LLM thing, but some of it would be your tone, um, the cleanness of the conversation, etc., etc. So, to take it to what we do today, to kind of build the analogy, you will have aspects that define how quote unquote good is the conversation or the image, etc. And that's comparable to what we do. Now, saying that this is easy to translate, it's not. It's going to be a significant effort for anyone that's dealing with LLM evaluation.
And this is maybe lead into like the idea of open source. And I think that's an important, even in the LLM evaluation, to have things open source, because one of the main complexity within the LLM evaluation is this hierarchical complexity. You start maybe by simple LLM, and then you are going into domain specific, and then you are going to language specific, then you're adding the multimodality, and each level of those has its own matrix and its own complexity. And it's not like you mentioned, it's not like the traditional ML matrix, which is everybody using. You have your own benchmark data set, you have F1 score, you have all of those metrics, and it's easy to generalize across all of the models. In this case, I think the main complexity is how to aggregate all of those different metrics for each one of those levels. So if we could give you a blank check and an open-ended resources, what is your ideal evaluation for those type of models that include domain, that include languages, that include support for multimodalities? So what is like, this is more of a mental exercise.
Yeah. Um, and it's pretty late here, so I'm not sure I'm going to pass really well on that. But let me start maybe with saying the following. As a company, we strongly believe in open source, and we've shown it. We've released the world our testing, classical AI testing package, and we've released last year our monitoring open source solution as well. So on our side, we strongly believe in open source, and I believe that open source can be really a great way to address some of the aspects that we've discussed. It's multimodality, it's multi-language, it's different domain knowledge aspects, and it's different cultures. Because let's just give an example. If we're talking about multimodality, and I'm not going to name these cultures, but you can imagine those. In some cultures, my culture included, it can be, pretty acceptable that you raise your voice during a conversation, during a discussion. A civilized discussion can include raising your voice. In some other cultures, if you're raising your voice, this is a big red flag, like the color of my shirt right now. So you need to address it when you evaluate a multimodal LLM application that includes an audio aspect. So in order to address it, there's no single company that's going to be able. Well, there might be. We are seeing actually a single company that has completely revamped the world of AI, and that's OpenAI. But
That's
I
right.
think that on the LLM evaluation side, most likely it's going to be, a collection of people that say, I'm from a relatively small country with a culture that is pretty unique. I want to make sure that the multimodal LLM application works on my data. So I'll take the time and contribute to the open source because I'm not going to build from scratch a brand new application on one side. On the other side, I cannot use, the results of the current models are going to get me that far. So open source is a great way to address it. Um, and I think that if you're talking about specific metrics, so I just mentioned one, which is the ability to address the tone of conversation. I
That's
think
correct.
that if you're looking into image processing, and you want to make sure that there is no bias that is culturally related, you know, and you want to ensure, and we all know, um, some of these models have been trained on people that come from a specific culture. So we need to make sure
That's correct.
that we have a multicultural training set, and we need to make and the metric needs to make sure that bias, it checks for non-bias, it checks from non-bias from multiple aspects, and it makes sure that this is part of your evaluation process. You also need to make sure that you're not going to disclose any confidential information in an image. Okay, I don't know what about you, but on my cell phone, I have some images of my ID card because it's easy to do, and I have on my I'm an iPhone guy, so I have on my Apple Pay, my credit card information, et cetera, et cetera. We need to make sure that these things are not going to get disclosed, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that eventually there's going to be a multitude of metrics that will ensure non-bias, that will ensure safety, but those need to be multimodal, and that's I wouldn't say extremely complex, but that's going to be pretty, I would say, significantly more complex than what we're
Mm.
doing today on the LLM, um, kind of the language side. And I don't know how to call an LLM multimodal uh, process. It's not going to be, the term is not going to be LLM.
No, definitely not. I mean, there is a lot of discussion around red teaming, which is just trying to hack those prompts and get the LLM to behave in a certain way. But I need actually to take advantage of the last 2, 3 minutes that we have and read your mind in the policies that each one of those countries trying to impose for AI. What is your thoughts process around like those policies and how they're going to be affecting the LLM evaluation and LLM evaluation companies?
So um, I'll try not to get into politics, but I'll say the following. I think that policies are extremely important, but we need to make sure that those policies are not going to impose um, on the world and specifically on some countries a uh, you know something that's going to get freedom of speech out of the LLM world. So there is a balance here, and we need to make sure that people feel safe when they're using it, but we need to make sure that people will not stop speaking because they're afraid that the LLM is going to say, "Oh, red flag, you're disobeying this and that rule."
Mm.
So a balance is the right word. And then in terms of the impact on the LLM evaluation companies, it's a business opportunity for us, to be honest.
That's true.
The ability to detect safety issues, be it toxicity or bad sentiment or, images that, training on images that are um, not legit, those things can definitely be addressed by some of the LLM evaluation company solutions. And I think that that's a great opportunity. It's a place where I would say my own personal beliefs and the space that I'm working in coincide, because I strongly believe that the balance is extremely important, and we should keep a democratic voice that does not um, hurt anyone. And the fact that LLM evaluation companies can actually contribute to this is a great thing.
I think it's really important because the more regulation that we put, sometimes we create something that is not reflecting our own life and our own like experience as human, which is very important to be captured by the LLM evaluation. Yaron, thank you so much. It was nice talking to you, and I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for hosting me. I'm really honored to be